Welcome back to the Stick 'em Up podcast. Brundi, it is trade deadline day, and the trade deadline has been passed for maybe an hour, maybe half an hour, and there's still some details trickling in, but there's a lot of absolutely massive league-wide implications going on today, as there usually is. And I guess we're probably just going to start from the oldest trade that we haven't talked about and work our way through every single one of these trades. Yeah, I guess let's just start it off right away.
Yeah, some of these trades will go a little bit more in depth than on the big ones, and some of them we'll just mention them just for the sake of it, in case you want to know about the trade or haven't heard about it.
Right.
Yeah, as you mentioned, trade deadline has just recently passed, but as always, um, trades slowly filter through as long as they were submitted or a trade call is pending by uh, the 3 o'clock Eastern time deadline. Trades can go through, and some of the biggest trades we've seen um, today have taken place after that deadline. Is they slowly filter in. So, um, assuming we'll probably get at least a couple more trades that pop up by the time we're done here. But yeah, might as well just start off with the oldest trade and work our way towards the most recent ones here.
Yep. So I believe the oldest one that we have yet to talk about was the Edmonton Oilers acquiring centerman Trent Frederick from the New Jersey Devils in exchange for Shane LaChance, and the Devils are also retaining 50% of Frederick's contract.
Yeah. So this was kind of part of a three-team trade. Edmonton also got Max Jones from Boston, and Boston is getting uh, prospect Max Warner, a second-round pick in 2025, and a fourth-round pick in 2026. I mean, Edmonton's just getting some more depth players. That's kind of the not the main thing they needed. The main thing they needed was goaltending. Um, and this kind of set the market. I mean, a second and a fourth round pick for a third liner and a fourth liner, really. Like that's
Yeah,
again,
and
it's good depth for Edmonton though, and it makes their bottom six a lot bigger and tougher to play against. So, which was the main thing they were doing here.
and the Oilers, they don't need to worry about these draft picks. I mean, not only are they not firsts, but we've said it plenty of times, they are insanely in win now mode. They need to win with McDavid and Draisaitl in their primes. If you don't, you fumbled the bag something fierce. And yeah, this makes them better. Would have liked to see him get a goalie, but you know what? It does make them better. They clearly think Stuart Skinner has the juice.
It does help them, and the biggest thing is they're being buyers. They're not just sitting with their dick in their hands, which they've done in the past with McDavid and Draisaitl. So can't complain too much.
Yeah.
With that here.
And then what are the Devils getting out of this one here? So
They're getting Shane LaChance, who I believe he's he's a young prospect forward, and he's relatively big. I think he's a bigger forward. So don't know if he's going to turn into much. My guess is in the NHL probably a bottom sixer, kind of maybe a lower end Trent Frederick type guy. So to retain on an expiring contract at the end of the year and you get a prospect, yeah, why not? Like you have so much money available after Jack Hughes goes down and is done for the year, which hurts New Jersey. But
looks like
I don't
he's
hate it for him.
21 years old, 6'5", 218.
Yeah,
he's putting up decent points, just under a point per game, a little bit in Boston University the last 2 years. So nothing too bad there. Yeah, it's just it's one of those small business things where a lot of these teams, people will see like in a trade we'll talk about in a second here, Detroit retains on a guy's contract, and people are like, why are they doing that? They need to be buying and stuff. And it's like, it's not that they aren't buyers, it's that it's a very small amount, and if you aren't going to use that cap space, you can just get like free picks or prospects out of it. Like, you might as well weaponize it when you have it.
Exactly. You might as well just get what you can get with that extra space and maybe turn it into something. Maybe it doesn't, but it's worth taking the risk, I would say.
Yeah. And honestly, I like it pretty equally for all three teams. low risk for the Devils. Bruins got a good return. Oilers got a guy they need for the playoffs.
Yeah, exactly. If we're doing trade grades, probably only going to do them on like the major, the really big name trades. And again, good ad for Edmonton, but I don't classify this as a big trade.
Yeah.
Moving on to the next one. This one's a quick one, won't take long. The Florida Panthers, we talked about them, going to prioritize getting a backup goaltender with Spencer Knight leaving. They acquire Vitek Vanacek from San Jose in exchange for, I'm not going to call him a prospect, just for Patrick Giles, who you were a big fan of him, given where he comes from, where he originates from, where he was born. You're a big fan of this guy.
Yeah, he was born in Chevy Chase. Apparently,
no idea where the fuck that is.
Apparently,
do you even know what state that is?
MD. What state is that? MD, Maryland.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, you can tell. So we're Canadian, so we're not supposed to know this stuff.
Yeah. I probably would have got it if it was a slightly bigger state than Maryland.
But... Yeah, if there's so many I would know, but yeah, Maryland, no.
I'm surprised. I'm just surprised there's this an entire town called Chevy Chase. They must have been real big fans of Caddyshack, but yeah, it's he might be something. He might not. Probably
it's an expiring contract, so
probably not.
Doesn't hurt Florida after this year. You bring him in, he can be a solid backup on a good team. Why not, right? And there wasn't many goalies available.
No, there's very few. So. Most of the goalies that were available got bought up earlier in the year. Pretty much half of them by the Avs at one point before they landed on Blackwood.
Yeah. Moving on to the next deal. This is the first kind of big one that we've got that we'll be doing throughout this episode. I'll let you break down this one as it involves your TBL, your Tampa Bay Lightning here.
Yes, and luckily Sportsnet has this one all together, all in the one trade instead of separately as if they were different. So the main pieces are the Tampa Bay Lightning acquiring 2-time Stanley Cup champion Yanni Gourde and Oliver Bjorkstrand, as well as prospect Kyle Aucoin and a 5th-round pick from 2026. The Kraken get from the Lightning Mikey Eyssimont. They retain 50% of Gourde's contract, which is just for the rest of this year. A 1st-round pick in 2026, a 1st-round pick in 2027, and a 2nd-round pick this year. And then Detroit is the 3rd team in. They get a conditional 4th-round pick from the Lightning for this year, which is either the Lightning's or the Oilers, I believe. And they do that. They get that to retain 25% of Gourde's contract. So the Lightning getting Gourde back at 25% the cost. Oliver Bjorkstrand, a real nice haul for the Kraken, and then just a free 4th rounder for a tiny bit of cap space for the Red Wings.
Yeah, like that's basically what it is. I have a lot of thoughts on this trade, but I'm going to try to keep it short and sweet and to a minimum. I like this for Tampa a lot. First of all, like for them, I'll give them an A because 1st-round picks don't matter to you. Your goal is to win right now. You have a window basically of the next 5 years, and it's in the next 5 years. How many cups can you win? A 1st-round pick in 2026, 2027, they're not going to be there to help you when you're trying to win now with this core. And once guys like Kucherov and Hedman and Vasilevsky start to age out, you're potentially still going to be a playoff team with some of the guys you have, but not going to be a top contender like they are right now. So you might as well go all in.
Yeah.
You didn't need help with goaltending. You didn't need help on the blue line. What you needed is you needed help to your bottom 6, which you get that in Yanni Gourde. And you needed anyone who could fit on that 2nd line. And they haven't had that, and you easily get that in Oliver Bjorkstrand. For Seattle, I mean,
such a good fit. Like
he's a perfect. I didn't have him. I didn't think he was going to go to Tampa, but he's a perfect fit on that 2nd line.
Yeah, I didn't have him much on my radar, but responsible 2-way guy, really good shot. He could play right wing on that second line we were talking about. He's a right-handed shot, which means he's probably going to end up on that top power play. in Stamkos's old spot. So like it's great, and he's under contract until next year as well. So we're going to get
Which I
2
think is
years out of him.
exactly why there was an extra first thrown in there, or
Yeah.
potentially maybe the second, one of the two.
Yeah, I think
But
that
for
was great.
Seattle, I mean, you're a seller. We are saying that you should be selling. Like, you made the playoffs the 1 year, cool, great, but it hasn't been working well. I don't think this trade is enough to save Ron Francis's job. Just saying, I think he should be. He maybe should have been traded today. Maybe he should have traded himself out of Seattle today, but it didn't happen. But you get 2 firsts and a second. I think if you're Seattle, you maybe use that second this year. Maybe you trade up with it. Maybe use the first round pick in 2026. With that pick in 2027, I'd say probably maybe trade it.
Yeah,
Like
probably try
already
and
got a
flip
lot of
that.
good pieces in place.
Yeah.
Try to maybe start building up. Like if you're waiting till 2027, then you're just going to continue to keep tearing it down. And you don't have that luxury because you went all in on Montour and Chandler Stevenson, which that contract looks horrific, but that's
Yeah.
where you're at. So for Seattle,
I'd give it an A as well, honestly.
I'd give an A for them as well.
That's a lot of assets. Michael Asamont's still going to be a good player for them as well. He's not going to crack the top 6, but he's a great bottom 6.
He's a good, yeah, but he's probably not going to be anything long term for them there. I'm going to give Seattle a B plus, only because instead of that first round pick in 2027, I would have liked to maybe see them, maybe even not even the first in 2027, 2025. If you could have gotten guys like you mentioned, like an Isaac Howard or Connor Geeky, something that can be implemented into their lineup sooner rather than later. Again, it's just because of where they're at now and what they did in free agency. It's like you can't keep kicking the can down the road. Like you're not in a San Jose spot or a Chicago where you can sit on a 2027 first round pick. Seattle's kind of got to start getting the ball rolling in some ways. So right now, I'll give them a B plus. But if they end up, obviously we know they didn't now, but at the draft, free agency, next trade deadline, if they flip that 2027 first for something, I like it a lot more for them. And Detroit, like you mentioned previously,
free fourth.
You get a free fourth on a contract retention that's gone after this season. So why wouldn't you?
Yeah, easy enough. Yeah, that's a really good point. That because as it was announced that obviously the headline as this trade was slowly coming out and rumors about it were circulating, it was Yanni Gourde and Bjorkstrand are going to Tampa, and it's like, okay, what's the return? That's not going to be cheap. And a lot of Tampa fans, were myself very much included, were worried it was going to be either Isaac Howard or Connor Geeky, potentially both if they were insane. But thank God we didn't move either of them, because I think they're going to be great for us. And they're also, obviously, because the first rounders, those picks are a year and 2 years ahead and haven't been made yet. They fit the timeline so much worse for us, because if those guys are going to play for us, they need to play relatively soon.
And the thing I don't like, especially on the trade deadline season, like we saw this a lot over the last couple of years, especially last year, I kind of got fooled by it, is they always just say 2 first rounders. But in the lingo of the insiders, you don't know if that means like a first round pick and a prospect that was a former first round pick. Like last year, I thought San Jose was getting 2 first round picks for Thomas Hertl, but it was like, no, it's a first round pick and a prospect who's a former first. So I was very unsure when I saw that for Tampa. I was like, okay, so it's going to be a first round pick, but then is it a prospect? Are they giving up 2 firsts? I wasn't sure, but two firsts is a lot to give up. But again, you're trying to win now. The goal is to win now. So you pull the trigger on it and you run with it.
Yeah, we got 2 great players, and also both of them with a much longer resume than a guy like Tanner Jeannot, which people are comparing those trades, that trade to this trade, just because of where you sent out a bunch of picks, but it's not even close to that. It's a very different scenario.
But Tampa fans are gonna have to hear about that Jeannot trade forever. You can't avoid it. It's a piece of history at this point.
I mean, sure. People need to find something. Yeah, because people need to find something to complain about with us.
Exactly. moving on to the next deal. This is a quick one. San Jose acquires defenseman Vinny Darnay from the Pittsburgh Penguins in exchange for a 5th-round pick in 2028.
Man, that pick's going to be fun when it happens, huh?
Yeah, like San Jose getting a big blue liner, big physical guy, help protect the young guys. So why not? It's a 5th-round pick that's not going to matter. You could flip Darnay next year and get a 5th.
Yeah,
Who cares? Like who fucking cares?
Yeah, and they're bringing him in, and they end up shipping out at least another D-man that we'll talk about later on. So he might be getting minutes in for San Jose pretty quick here.
Yeah, I expect him to play relatively soon.
But right after that, the next trade that happened, which I kind of assume is partially why Pittsburgh shipped out a defenseman, the Penguins acquired Luke Schenn and Tommy Novak from the Predators in exchange for Michael Bunting and a 4th-round pick in 2026. This is confusing to me.
Two bonehead GMs just being like, "Hey, let's make a deal for the sake of making a deal." This doesn't benefit either team.
Yeah.
Well,
I guess it gets
yeah.
Luke Schenn out of the Predators locker room after he was not so kind towards them.
Actually, it kind of does benefit Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
because as we'll talk about, they did flip Luke Schenn. They got some picks back.
Yeah,
and my
that's
opinion
pretty important to this. We could talk about that now as well.
Yeah, yeah. If yeah,
yeah.
Just find here what do you know what the final picks were? I don't know the years, but I know what kind of picks they were.
Yeah. So after that trade with the Preds, the Penguins flipped Luke Schenn to the Jets for a 2nd rounder in 26 and a 4th rounder in 27.
Yeah. So if you're Nashville, for Pittsburgh, I don't hate it because honestly, at this point, I value Tommy Novak more than Michael Bunting. You can feel a different way if you want, but that's why I feel about it. And you get a 2nd and a 4th. I just don't get exactly what Barry Trotz is doing here. Like, if you want to get a little bit more physical and gritty up front, sure, but I just don't think this was the right move to make. Me personally,
I get the
idea. It's just
a
weird one. I don't get it for Nashville. Pittsburgh makes sense because they flipped Luke Schenn. But if they got Novak, it would be like, what is this deal?
Yeah, they got Novak a 2nd and 2 4ths for Bunting, basically, and I get why they would bring in Bunting. The Preds are kind of lifeless, even though they have so much skill, and Bunting's a guy that can kind of help drag the team into the fight. But I struggle to find Michael Bunting being that missing piece to get the Preds on track for next year.
Exactly. But that's exactly where I'm at with it. I don't fully get it. I do like it for Pittsburgh again because they flipped Luke Schenn. I think Tommy Novak's a great center addition for them, a little bit on the younger side. But at the end of the day, who fucking cares?
It's a B for Penguins and a C- for the Preds.
Two bad teams that, in my opinion, have no direction necessarily right now. So,
yeah,
cool. Yeah. You made a deal to say you made one. Yeah, I'm not moved by this.
Yeah. After that, we have the New Jersey Devils acquiring defenseman Brian Dumoulin from the Ducks in exchange for Herman Traff, a conditional 2nd-round pick in this year's draft, and they also retained 50% of Dumoulin's contract. Do you know much about Herman Traff?
He's a decent prospect. I don't know if he'll necessarily become anything, but he's not a no-name prospect, right? His name being in there does hold some value. Obviously, I think the big part is the 2nd-round pick. I believe it's either one team 2nd or another. It's not getting upgraded to a 1st.
Yeah.
So for Anaheim, I mean, yeah, why not? You're moving out Dumoulin, you're getting a decent prospect, and you're getting a 2nd. That's great work for New Jersey. What are you doing? You don't need more help on the blue line. You have so many. You're at the point where you have great prospects like Nemec and Casey not playing because your blue line is so loaded. Or star centerman Jack Hughes gets injured again. Okay, but let's grab a defenseman.
Yeah, I don't know.
F-. I like Dumoulin as a player. I think it's weird that he's 6'6", 6'4", 210 or something, and he's one of the lesser physical defensemen in the league. I think it's kind of weird. He's a big body, but he just doesn't use it. So
Yeah.
Again, no disrespect to Dumoulin, but like F- for New Jersey. Anaheim, you can give him whatever grade you want, but for New Jersey, it's an F-.
Yeah, I think Dumoulin's on. I'm pretty sure it's an expiring contract. So
Yeah,
you know what? I mean, they got something out of a guy that isn't. He's 33. He's not a part of their future. I'll give a B plus to the Ducks. I agree with the Devils. I don't. They fine player doesn't fit your timeline. Doesn't
fit what you need.
Doesn't fit term and doesn't fit your need at all. In fact, they had a logjam. If anything, they should be trading out one of their defensemen for some center depth or something.
Yeah.
Like it. I just don't. Did the Ducks go to them and say, "Do you want him?" Like, surely the Devils weren't calling around about defensemen. Like, I don't.
Yeah, I don't.
I don't even.
I don't get it one bit. I can't even try to put logic behind New Jersey's decision. Just a weird one.
Yeah. The next trade we got here, I'll let you talk about it, but I think this is a guy that probably would have been better for the Devils to go after.
This is, and this isn't because it's a player come from San Jose. This is the most underrated, under the radar, sneaky addition made during the course. This wasn't a trade deadline day. This happened yesterday, but I think it's still the sneakiest one. San Jose acquiring a 4th round pick in 2026 from the Florida Panthers in exchange for a 7th round pick in 2027 and forward Nico Sturm. Now, here's the thing. Nico Sturm, former Stanley Cup champion, so that holds some value there.
Who did he win with?
Colorado.
Right.
Good, and I saw a lot of, and this is something I was proud of on Twitter. I turned a lot of Panthers fans' head on this because they didn't know much about Nico Sturm. They're like, why do we need him? Who is he?
Yeah.
4th line center. You probably think, hey, nothing great. Great penalty killer. And above all else, what's something that's so huge that was instrumental for Florida in the playoffs and especially in the Stanley Cup final? Winning faceoffs. What were they in a position that needed? Winning faceoffs near the end of the game to get possession to win games. What is Nico Sturm? The best faceoff percentage out of any player in the league this season.
Wow.
You got the best faceoff taker. You're in a position now where if you're 5 seconds left in the game, you're up by 1 in your own end. Barkov might not be taking the faceoff. He might be on the wing because it's Nico Sturm who, again, is just a terrific faceoff taker, and that's why I think this is a huge ad for Florida because you're not going to be getting on Florida. He might actually put up some numbers, but the biggest thing is you get a penalty killer who wins more faceoffs than anyone else. That's what it comes down to. And you're giving up a 4th and you get a 7th back. Why not? Like you do that all day.
They don't. Yeah, the Panthers have no reason to care about a 4th rounder next year. So like this is a slam dunk for them.
For San Jose, I don't even care what grade for them. Like who cares with them?
It's fine.
Florida, like A+.
Yeah,
A+. I mean,
do you know what his face-off numbers are this year? Like the percentage?
Let me check. I think he's at like 62.7%.
Wow.
No, Barkov 59. So you've got Sturm and Barkov, 2 of the best face-off guys now, both on your team.
Yeah, you put them out there together on an important face-off. If one even gets thrown out, you got the other. Like you're golden.
Bo Horvat and Pajot, 4 and 5. Kind of cool for the Owls.
Good for them.
Which we'll get to the Owls at some point here.
Oh, we'll get to the freaking Islanders. But for now, we are going to be talking about the Vegas Golden Knights and the New York Rangers. The Vegas Golden Knights
I'm not convinced this is their only move. I think something else is happening. And I think it's going to be one of those late trades that rolls through. I don't think Vegas is done.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if something did happen.
Stand as their only trade, and I don't think it is.
It would be weird if it was, wouldn't it be? Like
it would be so
Vegas
weird.
Of all teams. They should be buyers, and every deadline they are absolutely huge buyers as well.
Their Twitter admin, I don't know if you've seen this, but their Twitter admin broke Twitter with one singular tweet, one word. They just tweeted out "hi" this morning, all lowercase, and people just have lost their minds online because They just want to know what Vegas is up to, what team are they going to fleece, how are they going to circumvent the cap. Like they just put people in shambles with one tweet, just saying hi. It's incredible.
Watch them not do anything either.
It's so incredible, like how they can just rage bait and just rattle so many people. Just one word.
Just
It's
a little high.
incredible. It's incredible.
But as far as this trade goes, which might be their only trade that remains to be seen, they have brought back Riley Smith, and they are sending to the New York Rangers Brendan Brisson and a 3rd-round pick this year. Yeah, it doesn't look like the Rangers retained any salary. So
I don't believe so.
Yeah, you know what? They
Good
got
for Vegas. You bring Riley Smith back. I actually got a couple of cool facts here about this. So,
hit me with it.
With Vegas trading Brendan Brisson, he is a former 1st-round pick of the Vegas Golden Knights. The only 1st-round pick of Vegas's that is with the organization is Trevor Connolly, who they literally just drafted last year in 2024. From the moment they came to the league in their first draft, I think was 2017. They had 3 firsts that year as well, which is pretty cool. All gone. Since then, their 1st-round picks have either been traded or any player they have drafted with their first is gone. The second one, Riley Smith, now in his career, has been traded for every single possible draft pick. He's been traded for a first, or with a first, or whatever, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th now.
Wow, that's kind of wild.
There's something to be said with that, but it's a good deal for both teams. Rangers move on from an expiring contract. A guy that's not a long-term fit. You get a young player who, former 1st-round pick. I hate when people say that at times because like he is 23, so you're taking a chance on him. Kind of similar to how San Jose took a chance on Philip Zadina last year. Could work out, might not, but again, it's probably the best you were going to get, a prospect and a pick. So, and for Vegas, I mean, you bring back Riley Smith. He's going to love it there. He already knows the system. Fans are going to love having him back. Stanley Cup champion. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd give this like
Makes your team better.
I'd give this like an A- for Vegas. I'll give it a B for the Rangers. A B- for the Rangers.
I'd give the Rangers an A. Like,
you think it's that good
I think
for
at worst, like at worst.
You think it's that good for him?
I mean, at worst case scenario, like what was Riley Smith for you? A bottom 6 forward. I think Brendan Brisson, he probably doesn't turn into a top 6 forward, but I think he can be an effective bottom 6 forward for you. So,
oh, okay.
Probably doesn't have the ceiling of Riley Smith in his career, but long term, like it's a guy that slots in, is way younger, can grind it out in the bottom 6, and a 3rd-round pick. Yeah.
Okay.
Most 3rd-round picks don't become anything, but
yeah, I wasn't sure about Brisson. I thought he was a bit more of a question mark, but obviously not with a super high ceiling. But if it's looking more than likely that he'll make the NHL and play some games for him, then yeah, I don't have a problem with it at all.
And actually, out of all current players in the NHL right now that have played in at least one game this season, more players have come into the league as undrafted players than there were 3rd rounds. So,
wow.
That's why I'm like a 3rd-round pick. I don't hold much value to because you've got just as good of a chance of getting a full-time NHLer from a guy that was undrafted. Do it that way you will, but I think that does hold some value there.
Yeah, I think a lot of people get kind of NHL franchise mode brain, and they value picks a little bit higher than they need to a lot of the time.
1st and 2nds, like good. I give those value, but 3rd and down, nah. Especially when they're probably going to be like a late 3rd rounder. Like you might get a stud, you might get a Ilya Sorokin, you might get a Braden Point, but it's a very slim chance.
Yeah, and
with the Rangers development,
yeah,
you can't even develop a 2nd overall pick. You ain't developing a 3rd-round pick.
It took them a while to develop a 1st overall pick, but like, yeah,
it's not even looking that good this season. Sorry, Rangers, but.
Yeah, even 1st rounders, honestly, I think are often at least like playoff team first rounders, I think, are overrated at times because like a lot of those guys don't even play in the NHL either. Like, but like you can get a pretty
Yeah.
solid player for a first rounder a lot of the time.
Like it depends on the drafter, I think, as well. Like
Yeah, that is also true.
if you say to me, we'll talk about Dallas because all like their firsts are gone for the next while, which we'll get to. Their first round pick this year on a scale from 1 to 10, because assuming it's going to be later, I value that at like a 5 or a 6. Their first round next year, assuming again it's going to be a late first, that's in probably like an 8, because it just depends on how deep the draft is, how good that first round is, and the first round next year is looking like in the later portion going to be a lot better than this year. No, not saying you might not get a good player late in the first round this year, but statistically, I think you have a much better chance next year.
Yeah. But we'll keep moving through these trades here. We got a goalie swap. We got the Jets and Panthers swapping goalies. Chris Drieger going to the Jets and Capo Kakinen going to the Panthers.
Chris Drieger, Calgary Hitmen legend. Just want to put that out there.
Legend.
Oh yeah, it's a depth swap. Like Chris Drieger going to be the third stringer for Winnipeg. Capo Kakinen going to be the third stringer for Florida. Kind of cool that Kakinen and Vanacek were traded for each other at the deadline last year, and now they both find themselves on Florida a year later. Kind of cool how that worked out for them.
Yeah, actually.
I don't hate it for either team.
No.
It's
do you prefer one of these goalies?
Swap. It's tough to say because they both looked promising at times, but then have kind of been forced to being an AHL goalie. So not seeing them in the NHL for almost a year, like it's tough to tell, really.
It really is.
I would say I like it for Winnipeg a bit more, maybe just because I think Drieger has the more proven upside. We've seen what he can do, and it was to the point where Seattle was comfortable at one point having him be the starting goalie right out of the gate until they went out and signed Philip Grubauer. So again, if I had to pick a winner, I'd go Winnipeg just because you get more of a proven goalie.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, it's a pretty relatively even swap, especially right now. We don't know what they're going to be. Probably rough for Chris Drieger. He was probably having a fun time hanging out in Florida. Now he's got to go up to cold Winnipeg.
Yeah,
but you know what? If they go on a run and win the cup this year, I don't think he'll care very much.
Yeah, exactly.
Moving on, we got another Rangers trade. This one is between the Canucks and the Rangers. The Canucks acquire a third-round pick, and the New York Rangers acquire Carson Soucy. What do you think on this? Because I think this is.
I don't care for this trade. If I had to pick a winner, Vancouver, because you didn't retain on Soucy. Good defenseman.
That's fair.
Canucks fans in particular, the ones on Twitter, love to just pump up their players and act like their value so much higher. And they're like, oh.
Every fan base does that.
Yeah, but they call Soucy like a bona fide, top 4 defenseman. On the Canucks, maybe. On a Stanley Cup contender or on a Stanley Cup winning team, he's a bottom pair guy. So I think he's got one. I don't know if you can pull it up here, but I believe Soucy has another year left on his deal.
Yeah, he has 2 years left, a no trade clause, and he's making $3.25 million for the next 2 years.
So you know what? If Vancouver retained half, you maybe get a second or you get a third and a prospect, but to not have to retain, you get a third. Yeah, sure. You move on from the contract. You can put that money to better use elsewhere in the offseason.
Yeah.
I kind of get it for the Rangers because you do need defenseman help, especially with Adam Fox being out injured. Again, I would have liked to maybe see you go after a different player. I don't hate it for them. Don't love the contract, but it fits what they need. So
yeah, I like it a little more for the Canucks, but
you opened up money trading away Riley Smith. Yeah, I would still give the edge to Vancouver though, 100%.
Yeah,
100%.
Do you want to cover this next one we got here?
Yeah. This was I think one of the more surprising deals because this was a player whose name wasn't even out there as a potential trade option. The Edmonton Oilers Getting a goalie? Nope. You thought wrong. They go out and acquire defenseman Jake Wallman from San Jose in exchange for a conditional first round pick in 2026, along with uh, AHL forward Carl Berglund. I'm not going to call him a prospect because he's not. The conditions on that first is in 2026 is it's top 10 protected, but if any time prior to the 2026 trade deadline, Edmonton trades their 2027 first round pick, San Jose gets the 2026 first regardless. So basically a 2026 first for Jake Wallman. No salary retained either. Going to the Oilers.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know much about Carl Berglund. He is 25 years old.
He's
playing in the
not doing
AHL for
much in
quite a
the
few years.
AHL. Not doing much in the AHL. It's basically Wallman for a first. Again, Wallman's name wasn't out there, and Greer talked about it and said, like, if we're gonna move guys like this, it's got to be an offer that we can't refuse. Like, it would be insane to not. And apparently Edmonton's been inquiring and like hounding San Jose about Wallman for like the last month. So I think they were happy to finally get their hands on him. I like it for both teams. For Edmonton, you get a defenseman who is left-handed but can easily play on the right side. Probably going to quarterback your second power play. Is great at transitioning, from defense to offense, breaking up plays and getting to loose pucks. That's exactly what you need. Would be way better if he was right-handed, but he can still play on the right side. Like let's not act like he can't do that because he can. So he's a perfect fit on their blue line, and that kind of bolsters your defense a bit more and can maybe mask how shaky your goaltending's been. And then for San Jose, yeah, Wallman fit in perfectly. He's kind of having a career year with the team, but 29 doesn't, necessarily fit the timeline of when you're looking to contend. And even if he does, for how many years, you're better off capitalizing when his value is at an all-time high because he did start off the year super hot, but then had an injury, came back for a bit, got injured, and then he's still been very effective, but his numbers have dropped a bit. And at the end of the day, the points you put up is kind of the biggest thing that is what your value is. So you might as well capitalize. You get a first, and in the long run, you got what, like 50 some games out of Jake Wallman. You got a first and a second. Like that's great work.
Yeah,
that's what it comes down
for free. Like they,
literally for free. Like that's
they got paid to get. They got paid a second rounder to have a player play great 50-ish great games for them and be a great part of the locker room. And then they got paid probably nothing guy in the AHL and a first rounder to take him away. Like they, in the grand scheme of things, could they have got a little more from? Probably. Did they make out like bandits? Absolutely. Anyway, like
but I think maybe you could have gotten more. But if you're gonna get more, it would be like you get a mid prospect in a second. Because again, like Jake Wallman is a good defenseman, and people love to say, San Jose trades their best defenseman. Yeah, he was their best defenseman. I'm not going to argue that. But again, it's one of those things you talk about with Carson Soucy. Jake Wallman on San Jose, number one defender on a Stanley Cup winning team, second pair guy.
Yeah.
So you trade a second pair defenseman, you get, again, it's conditional first, but either way, it's a guaranteed first round pick you're getting. Like that's why not? And because you never know, his value could drop. Once he's eligible for an extension this summer, if he's got an asking price, teams are going to want to know about that. If you're moving him, that could definitely hurt his value if he's wanting too much, right? So I don't love moving Wallman because I think he was a great fit on San Jose, but long term, it was the right move. So honestly, for both teams, straight up A's. Both teams get exactly what they needed. Edmonton gets better to win a cup now, and San Jose gets a first next year. So you could trade that first for a prospect, an established player. I know you because you love bringing it up to me. They could use that first to move up in a draft or something. So
I'm just excited at the prospect of them moving up in the draft to get use their first rounder to get one of those top like 4 guys that's really good, and then combining all their other firsts and some stuff to move up to get Victor Eklund, probably in the 5 to 10 range.
Well, we're not done with San Jose deals, and after today, I think William Eklund might need his brother in San Jose, but we'll get to that. We'll get to that at some point here.
Yeah.
What do we got next year? I moved over to a different page, so I don't know what we're working with here for the next one.
Yeah, if it changes at all, it takes a long time to reset on the Sportsnet site. Next, we have the Boston Bruins and the Minnesota Wild. The Minnesota Wild acquiring Justin Brazeau, and the Boston Bruins acquiring Jacob Lauko, Marat Kuznetsov, I believe is how it's pronounced, and a second rounder next year.
Yeah.
It's fine. I honestly don't know much about these guys. A couple names I've heard, but Justin Brazeau.
He basically is just a big body bottom 6 forward.
Big body bottom 6 guy. 10 goals for 20 points on the year. Not bad. Doesn't look like he takes a ton of penalties. 27 years old. Like, yeah, that's not a bad depth pickup at all.
Yeah,
for the Minnesota Wild.
Yeah, and Boston again. This was kind of part of it. You are,
selling for the first time in a long time.
Yeah, you're basically selling. So you take what you can get for a bottom 6, and I think you bring Jacob Lauko back. He's a former Bruin, so why not? And you get a forward prospect who looked like he had a high ceiling at one point, hasn't totally panned out in Minnesota. You take a chance on him, and you see if something sticks. You see if it works, and if not, at the end of the day, you're really not losing too much.
Yeah.
I don't mind this really what it is at the end of the day. Yeah.
Seems kind of pretty even, kind of neutral. One team's buying, one's selling. Pretty equal value. We'll see how these guys pan out, but yeah. B's all around. Something like that.
Yeah. Moving on to one of the bigger trades of the deadline. This one coming in at exactly 12 a.m., so midnight of trade deadline day. There's a lot of talk if Brock Nelson is going to be out the door. And we know the Islanders tried hard to re-sign him. That was their number one priority, was re-signing him. Unfortunately, wasn't going to work out. And so, in the span of 15 minutes, it came out that deal couldn't be reached. They're going to trade him. 15 minutes later, boom, Brock Nelson has been traded. So do you want to give us the details of the Brock Nelson trade here?
Yeah, so the Islanders have coming back their way a first round pick. It says 26 or 27. Did the Islanders get to choose that?
I think it's one of those ones where if Colorado trades their 2026 first, the Islanders get their 2027. If they don't trade the 2026, I believe there's a condition on that one. I'll double check though. You read off the rest of it.
Yeah, that'll be interesting because most teams do trade those picks when they have that option, but 2026 is notoriously looking to be a real deep draft, so maybe they'll want to make it the 27. But anyway, the Islanders are getting one of those first rounders, a conditional third rounder in 2028, centerman Callum Ritchie, defenseman most of the time Oliver Shillington, and they're retaining 50% of Brock Nelson's contract. And the Avalanche, of course, get Brock Nelson and is that Willem Dafoe? William Dafoe.
All I know is cap wages ruined my fucking eyeballs. You go through I clicked on the pick. You click on the trade details, and it's like a medium light gray text on like a mustardy orange background. It's like impossible to read. It just ruins your eyes. I can't find out what
yellow background.
You know what? Right now, so I can get your raw, honest reaction. I'm going to send you a because I'm assuming you got your phone on you here. I'm going to send you like what it looks like, and you just try looking at that, and it's like you can read it, but your eyes are fucking mangled, dude. It's bad.
What the hell is that? What is that?
It's so shit. It's awful.
Is it because like that's like one of the Islanders' colors or something?
I think so.
Oh my god, that's like that actually looks like a website that would give you a virus. Like
it ruins your eyeballs.
Wow, that's horrendous. Okay then.
So I don't know what the condition is on it, but either way, Islanders are getting it's for sure a first round pick.
Yeah. Does it?
So I mean,
it doesn't even say on there. It just says a conditional first rounder in 26, 27.
Yeah, it doesn't even say on that one. Which is even worse because I had to read through all that bullshit.
But good for the Islanders for moving Nelson. I think they definitely needed to.
You had to. You had to. Especially when he wanted a 5-year deal.
Oh, that
34, 33, 34. Doesn't matter.
That would have been straight up been an anchor in the later years. I like it for the Avs grabbing Brock Nelson. I don't know if Willie D is going to play for them much, but Nelson's going to be a great piece for them in what they're probably hoping is another cup run.
Defoe's an interesting prospect. Islanders AHL team notoriously is awful, so I can't really weigh players that are coming out of there. I think he's got potential, big body, maybe a bottom six if the Avs can develop him properly. Could be just a depth add for them. But the biggest thing was Brock Nelson. You needed to address that second line center position. He completely fits that bill. Yeah, maybe it's a bit to give up like a first in your top prospect.
I was say, how good is Callum Ritchie?
So I've actually I had a lot of talks about this last night. As you know, we've mentioned before, but for those who don't know, our dad is a massive Islanders fan. So I was chatting with him about this deal. Is he wasn't too sure about what this deal is. But Callum Ritchie, 27 or 26 overall, a couple years ago by Colorado. Still playing in the OHL, but for what it's worth, given how bad they were this year, in my opinion, was the best player on Team Canada at the World Juniors. He's a young centerman. He's easily going to be a top 6 forward, I think. Most scouts, from what I've seen, if they had to pick based on like from the time a player was drafted to their route through juniors and whatnot, and their trajectory and their numbers, the most comparable player they can link him to is Mark Scheifele. So
that'd be pretty cool if they could have a Mark Scheifele from this.
Does he become as good as a Mark Scheifele? I don't think so, but I think he's going to be right up there. So in the long run, he's going to be another Brock Nelson. So you get a guy that's going to become another Brock Nelson, like 14 years younger. You get a first, you get a third. You got Shillington, who you flipped for future considerations because you don't need him.
Yeah, so Shillington for free goes to the Ducks.
So honestly, for me, it's just an A+ for both teams.
I was gonna say
it's one of those ones where both teams get exactly what they need.
I'll give an A+ to the Islanders. Like Callum Ritchie looks like he's going to be great, and a first rounder and a third like thrown in as well. Like honestly, I love this for the Islanders. The Avs, I'll maybe give them an A instead of an A+.
Yeah, I was actually just thinking that I would give them an A because
Callum Ritchie and maybe moved another higher end pick or somebody else, it might have been a little nicer. But I still really like it for him.
I'm actually going to give the Avs an A, not for the reasons you said, but the fact that I think the Islanders did so well in this trade that I'm like, I can't put them on the same level because I think the Islanders did so well.
Right.
But again, it's not saying the Avs did bad. You needed a second line center. You went out and got the number one player on everyone's trade board, including our own, because here at Stick Up, we had our first official trade board, which we'll go through at the end of the episode because I want to see how many on that list were traded. I don't have the list pulled up here, but I will get it. So I'm curious to see what that, but again, you got the best center there. It's exactly what you needed. So
yeah,
if you have to give up a bit more, you do it. But again, it's a seller's market. We're going to go through other players that went for insane value that they normally never would in any other year. So
yeah,
it is a big part of it. Oh, well, it's the next trade.
Yeah,
so literally the next one.
I think Tampa and Seattle really helped set the market a bit with that, and I think that kind of screwed over a lot of buying teams as well. Like Bjorkstrand and Gord are great, but a roster player, a second and 2 firsts is quite steep. So I think that really
and a big
messed
thing
with some people's
is,
plans a bit.
Bjorkstrand did have that extra year.
Yeah,
people love saying,
that was
"Oh,
huge.
Florida set the market with the Seth Jones trade." No, Seth Jones has 1,000 years left on his deal.
That was more of a hockey trade than a deadline trade, you know?
Exactly. But
But
we're talking about how the price for players has gone up increasingly this year, and I think it's because, first of all, like the cap is going up, and also the fact that the field going into the deadline at least was wide open. Like there wasn't one team you could look at in the West or East and be like, that's the top dog. That's the team you want to stay away from at all costs. There's numerous teams you really don't want to face.
There's so many top teams right now. Like it feels nuts. Like it feels like the 5th best team in the league right now. Like I feel like they would beat the crap out of the best team in the league in like 2018 or something.
Yeah. But the first deadline, or the first trade of the kind of deadline frenzy, the Pittsburgh Penguins are trading Anthony Beauvillier to the Washington Capitals in exchange for a second-round pick in 2025. This is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
The market is crazy for sellers. So again, Beauvillier, you know Beauvillier pretty well, from the series between Tampa and the Isles a few years ago. At this point, bottom sixer. I think the days of hoping he becomes a top sixer, I think, are out the window. Bottom sixer, and for Pittsburgh, you get a second-round pick back all day.
All
For
day.
Washington, you get added depth. You don't care about a second-round pick.
Yeah.
You've got one of the best prospect pools already, and you're going to win a cup with Ovi.
Yeah. And you know what? It's a second rounder this year, which is important because I'm pretty sure both of us had the Capitals team picked to finish 7th in the division this year, and they're in heavy competition for the President's Trophy right now. So
yeah,
it's that second rounder's a lot less good this year than there's a good chance because they might just fall off, and this might be a one-off year where they're only good this year. So I like them not trading a pick in the future as well. And the vibes have been insane in Washington. Who knows? Beauvillier might be good for them. He might be like that middle 6 guy. Like who even knows?
Yeah. One, and the biggest thing, because as far as I know, nothing's come through with Washington. I don't believe they've made any more moves. And the biggest thing is Washington's biggest addition hasn't even happened yet. And their biggest addition will be when the NCAA years wrapped up and Ryan Leonard is, assuming there's no way he goes back for another year. He will be done and he'll be eligible to sign with Washington, probably get a couple season or a couple games under his belt to wrap up the regular season and then be with the team for playoffs. That's your biggest thing. Your former first round pick, who's been a stud for the last couple years, is coming in to join the team. That's your biggest addition that you're going to have coming in.
Yeah. Yeah, that's, man, the Caps, they just keep getting better and better somehow when we thought they were going to be so bad this year. Like they're looking nasty. I don't know if I'd want to face them in the playoffs.
Someone's going to have to. Someone's going to have to.
Probably rather play them than a lot of the teams that are going to make it from the Atlantic, but
yeah.
Speaking of another team in the Metro, the Philadelphia Flyers is up next. They made a trade with the Los Angeles Kings, the main piece being Andrei Kuzmenko is going to Los Angeles, and the Flyers are going to retain 50% of his contract. And for doing that, the Kings also get a 7th rounder this year, and the Flyers get a 3rd rounder in 3 years.
That's what I'm talking about, right? Like the Flyers retain 50% and you only get a 3rd and you give up a 7th. It's like, is one of those ones where I feel like you, and again, Kuzmenko's not having the best season, but you maybe could have gotten more. But at the same time, maybe the LA Kings were the only team interested in Kuzmenko, and they did need some scoring help, but would have liked to see them go another direction, but we know Kuzmenko's capable of. And if he can do that with LA, it could end up being a slam dunk. So very unsure.
Yeah, I obviously haven't watched him a ton in Philly, but yeah, this feels really cheap for this player, if I'm honest. Like I know a lot of people are a lot lower on him recently, but we are not that far removed from he had a like what was it, like a 38 goal season or something?
Yeah,
And
his first year with the Canucks.
and I'm trying to bring it up. It was literally there and then the screen just went all white. I had his by game stats, but like he's consistently been around a half point per game guy since he got to Philly. Like he's been pretty solid for him. Like an assist, no points, goal, assist, no points, 2 goals and an assist, no points, goal, no points, no points. So in his last 10-ish games, like he's been putting up some decent numbers. He's playing like anywhere from looks like 16 to 18 and a half minutes a game as well. So he's playing decent minutes. So like I'm not totally sure on why he's getting moved for a third rounder 3 years from now and you have to retain and you give them a seventh. Like
Yeah.
we were talking
Yeah,
earlier about
that's
how
exactly
third
where I'm at.
rounders are basically nothing, and this is that nothing in 3 years. Like I just don't really see it. If he's
Yeah.
that bad, you probably could have re-signed him for one more year at really cheap and then
Yeah.
seen where it went. But
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's
love it for the
exactly.
Kings.
It's kind of a weird one, but again, it kind of looks like it's the best LA could do to get some scoring help, and again, could work out, might not. Remains to be seen, but kind of thought
I
maybe Philly would get a bit more.
Yeah, I thought they were just not going to move him. I thought he was sticking around
I
and
didn't think they were either.
I thought he was going to hang out with Michkov for at least another year or two before they moved him.
Yeah, but he's and it's either that there wasn't going to be an because he is a pending UFA, so it's either they knew they weren't going to be able to get an extension with him. There is rumors that he is contemplating going back to the KHL, or the third possibility is they're very committed to having Torts there long term, and Kuzmenko was not going to be a Tortorella guy. It wasn't going to work.
It's got to be that, right? Like, there's no way they couldn't re-sign this guy. They're not a cap crunched team, and if you're moving him for this little, like, what?
No, but I'm thinking
What's
when I
the
say I
high end
couldn't
he gets?
re-sign him is
1.3.
like him and his camp might have been asking for a lot more than the Flyers felt he was worth. Maybe is what I mean. Not that like they physically couldn't, just
Yeah,
they wouldn't be comfortable with what was being asked.
yeah, I guess. But we'll see how he does in LA, and we'll see what the Flyers can do without him.
Yeah, I just got to tweak something here. If you want to read us the next deal here, one of the bigger deadline deals that involves a player that we talked about a lot about potentially being traded for a player that we didn't suspect at all.
No, not on my radar in the least. And that player that we didn't have on our radar is Josh Norris. This is between the Ottawa Senators and the Buffalo Sabres. Josh Norris is going to the Sabres as well as Jacob Bernard-Docker, a pretty decent, NHL level defenseman. Probably not in the top 4, but he's still a pretty solid hand. And going back the other way to the Sens, we get Dylan Cousins, Dennis Gilbert, and a second rounder next year. I really don't know about this. Like, this feels like a kind of like a lateral move, but like I guess it has more upside for the Sabres, but also more risk because Norris's contract is heavier. But I'm really not too sure what to think of this one yet. Like, I guess it'll just kind of reveal itself when the guys get settled in and we see how they play. Because who knows? Maybe Cousins is really complimentary to Brady Tkachuk or Drake Batherson or whoever, and maybe it's incredible. But for the time being, it's kind of strange. It's a trade with a lot of implications that I'm not. I'd love to know who reached out to who.
I probably a little bit of both. I think it's one of those deals that kind of makes sense for both teams. I think Dylan Cousins more than anything, I think needed a change of scenery out of out of Buffalo, like high draft pick just wasn't really working. So you kind of just got to move on and be like, it's not going to work. Let's try and get something back. And I think you get very similar value in Josh Norris. Obviously Norris coming in a little bit older, little bit bigger of a contract. Is a little bit has been a little bit more injury prone, but like it when healthy, we know what he is capable of producing. So it's kind of an even trade between both teams. I maybe give the slight edge to Ottawa because you do get that extra second. But at the end of the day, like it's not like either team really lost on this deal. It's like a B for both teams because you both give up a good piece, but you get a good piece back. It kind of fits for where both teams are going and what they're looking for. So
yeah,
the biggest loser is Brady Tkachuk, who if you haven't seen his interview, it's all over the place. Is very upset that his best friend Josh Norris was traded.
Yeah, and he's a guy who's been relatively vocal about his displeasure lately. He got a taste of big games in the Four Nations face-off, and he's sick of missing the playoffs every year with the Sens. And man, he also is very clearly a very proud American. I would not be surprised if he wanted to go there. I don't know how much longer Brady Tkachuk has in Ottawa if they don't make the playoffs this year.
Yeah, it's definitely something worth looking at, and I think with like with Dylan Cousins, the biggest thing is how does he fit with Ottawa? Like this is a guy that we know can be a yearly like 60, 65 plus point guy, but has struggled in Buffalo. So in the right position in Ottawa, I think he can be really good, and I think this puts Ottawa in a position where you can still easily go for the playoffs. It's just really how well does Cousins fit in with your team, and can he get it going?
Yeah, I definitely like this more for the Senators. Josh Norris, he had the 1 year where he put up 35 goals in only 66 games, 55 points, but other than that, his career high is 35, and that's not because of his production, it's his games. 56 games, 66, 8 a couple years ago, 50, 53. Dude is having a tough time putting together a healthy career, and unfortunately that does matter. If the guy can't play for you, it's not doing anything for you. Meanwhile, Cousins, 41 in his rookie year, 79, 81, 79, 61 this year, which is probably all of the Sabres games. If not, he missed a few. Like, if he's putting up 68 point 31 goal seasons in Buffalo, I got to imagine he's going to be even better in Ottawa. So I think he's more dependable, and he might have a higher upside as well.
That's kind of where I'm at with it.
A better contract too. Honestly, the more and more I'm looking at it, I guess it's not confusing why Buffalo would do this because Cousins has been struggling, especially the past 2 years, a bit more to be at that level, and it's just not working in Buffalo. But like,
how many guys have we seen get moved out of Buffalo that thrive? Look at Sam Reinhart. Look at Jack Eichel. Like Dylan Cousins could be the next. Where
Brandon
draft pick of Buffalo. That well, they didn't trade him. They decided to let him walk of all things.
They didn't even trade him to the Blackhawks. Wow.
No, yeah, they just didn't sign him. So again, it's honestly probably gonna be one of those things where Dylan Cousins is going to go on to be a stud in Ottawa in Buffalo's own division, and Buffalo fans are gonna be like, "Fuck, here's another guy that we drafted so high, and we trade him, and then they just they start going off, and it's just gonna further, I think, potentially further prove that there's a lot going wrong in Buffalo where players just can't get it done there, but can get it done elsewhere."
Yeah, Josh Norris making $8 million a year for the next 6. That might be tough if he can't turn it around and be healthy.
Yeah.
But
just staying healthy is the biggest thing.
Yeah. But we'll see where it goes from there. After that, do you want to break down this next one? This is kind of
the deadline deal.
This is the big one.
This was the big one. This is one that we talked so much about him over the last month. We talked about his first trade, and now we're talking about the second one, and that is the Mikko Rantanen trade. We now know for sure the trade was already discussed and agreed to last night, but then it basically came down to if the Dallas Stars can get Mikko Rantanen to agree to an extension.
A
And
sign
it
and
was
trade.
basically if Rantanen wasn't willing to agree to an extension, then there was no deal. If he was, boom, done deal. And we now know that it's officially a done deal. So the Dallas Stars are acquiring Mikko Rantanen, who has agreed to sign a 12/8 contract extension, $12 million for the next 8 years. And in exchange, the Carolina Hurricanes receive forward Logan Stankoven, a 2026 first round pick, a 2028 first round pick, along with a 2026 and 2027 third round pick. This was the meaty deal of the deadline that basically right out of the gate almost we knew that this deal was going to happen. And from early on in the morning till the point where the trade deadline had already passed, and we knew that the deal was going to happen. We were just waiting for the final like details of it, and we now know that is what the final deal is. So
yeah,
this is a big one. This is a very big one.
Yeah, this is absolutely seismic, and like not only are they trading two first rounders and two third rounders, but Logan Stankoven, who looks like he's going to be an absolutely incredible NHL player, probably not on the level of Mikko Rantanen, but man, that's a lot of stuff that Dallas gave up. But they're getting Mikko Rantanen. We know damn well who that is.
That's why Dallas said though, if he wasn't willing to sign.
Yeah, and that's exactly how they should have gone about it. We want to sign and trade. We don't want to be you, but we can't trade at the deadline. We don't want to bring him in and be like, okay, please sign now. And it looks like I would love to know, and I feel like we probably will over the next few months, especially throughout the summer, what Rantanen's thoughts were on all of this, because the contract that he signed, in total, that's a $96 million contract. That's a lot of money. It's less than what he was offered in Carolina. We don't know
the exact number that he was offered in Colorado.
And you're telling me after all the time he spent there, he would have preferred to be with the Stars at the same number?
Yeah.
Before he's even
so much going on with this, so we don't
played
know.
There.
I'm like, something happened. There's something somewhere. Someone did something, or someone was controlling there's just something, man.
I think it was his agent, because after the trade, he came out pretty quick and said, "Hey, I really didn't think I was going to get traded. I didn't think I thought I was going to sign eventually." And I'm seeing a lot of people, I don't know his name off the top of my head, but people are coming down pretty hard on Rantanen's agent for that. And that's not unfair, but I would also put some of it on Rantanen. Like that, if you're looking to sign, at least a $90+ million contract, lowballing it to $90 million, you probably should check in relatively often on how it's going. If it got to the point where the Avs felt so strongly like it's just not going to happen and make that trade, they've exhausted everything. So I feel like there might have been just some bad moves and some hardballing that went the wrong way from this agent. And Rantanen, I guess, I don't know, for lack of better words, should have paid a little more attention to the situation. Like, I get he's got to focus on his hockey year, but at a certain point, you got to be like, where are we on this? Like, people are talking about I might get traded. We don't know yet. Like, you got to check in. And unless his agent straight up lied and said, "Don't worry, this is going to work," and then he got traded, it's tough. But either way, he's getting paid huge money. He's going to a team that, is he going to be in as good of a situation as Colorado to win? I would say yes.
Yeah.
For him personally, maybe not. Like, don't get me wrong, Heiskanen's great. He's clearly a downgrade from Makar. And, who is he going to be playing with? Rupe Hintz or Jason Robertson?
Well, both of them. That's their two guys on the first line. Yeah. So
love those guys. They're not Nathan McKinnon. So
Yeah.
then
And
again, maybe he doesn't care about the counting points. Maybe he only cares about winning. You only have to care about your points to get your next contract, and he's freaking set.
yeah, it is worth noting also, um, on top of this deal, it was a big day for the Dallas Stars as they signed Wyatt Johnston to a 5-year contract extension, coming in at just a little bit over $8 million. The biggest thing is Wyatt Johnston, Mikko Rantanen have the same agent, so their agent just secured a massive payday as well today, by both these guys signing these deals. This is a perfect fit for me. Rantanen going to Dallas. I didn't think he was going to sign with Carolina, but I also didn't think they were going to move him. Um, but Dallas is a perfect fit. You know, he gets to go over there. He's locked in long term. And who does he get to play with? Mikael Granlund. You just played with him on with Finland at Four Nations.
Yeah.
Rupe Hintz just played with him over at the Four Nations. Esa Lindell, Four Nations. And the one guy he didn't get to, Miro Heiskanen, another Finnish player. Like he's going into a room filled with a good crop of Finnish players. And again, yeah, the top end talent, not as high as Vancouver, but deeper talent and more well rounded. Yeah. I think he's getting that in Dallas. So he gets to go play with a bunch of his countrymen who are locked in long term there, gets to run it there in Dallas with them for the next 8 years. Like it's a perfect scenario for him. And I wonder how Colorado feels now, though. You know, the biggest thing, Train Rantanen, is you want to get him out of the West, out of your division. And then he winds up back in your division, signing for exactly what you offered him. I got to imagine that. Despite how good Martin Necas has been for Colorado, I got to imagine this stings a little bit for them, though, to see Rantanen come back and join the Dallas Stars.
Yeah, and as if they weren't already pretty solidly rivals enough, I think this is going to be a rivalry, the Avs and the Stars to watch for the next several years. I think that's going to get heated. If they meet in the playoffs, that is going to go off, and there's a very good chance they will because the Jets are doing real well in that division, and I could easily see it going Stars Avalanche next. So we'll see if they play each other. Like that would just be crazy. And yeah, the Stars probably my pick for the Cup. I think I might have.
I think they're the team to beat in the West now with this addition. They were already a great team, great goaltending for the most part, solid blue line, great forwards, and now you add in Mikko Rantanen to pull up Dallas's top 6 here, which is absolutely insane that they have the ability to roll this out. You would have a first line of Jason Robertson, Rupe Hintz, Mikko Rantanen. A second line of Mason Marchment, Matt Duchene, Mikael Granlund. And a third line of Jamie Benn, Wyatt Johnston, and Evgeny Dadonov. And that also doesn't include Tyler Seguin, who is on LTIR right now, but is expected to potentially be back for the playoffs. So you move out Dadonov, you put Seguin in there. That is a beefy top 9 that they have.
That's absolutely disgusting. I don't know if these are the actual lines. I definitely, at some point, you got to imagine Johnston's going to get into the top 6 because, I mean, they literally just signed him to a 5-year, 8.5 extension. Was it 8.5?
It was somewhere around there, somewhere between 8 and 8.5, I believe. But worth noting, Wyatt Johnston over the last 30 games has been a point per game guy on that third line. With the power play time, like he's still very effective, but he definitely is long term definitely going to be in the top 6.
Yeah, he's only 21, putting up these insane numbers. Like honestly, sooner rather than later, they're going to want to get him on that top line with Rantanen. Like Rupe Hintz is good. Wyatt Johnston looks like a guy who could genuinely be going for like Art Ross level awards in 3 years. Like that sounds insane, but like he's already putting up phenomenal numbers and he's 21 years old. And and he's doing all that playing with Ben and Dadonov. Bless their hearts, they're not Jason Roberts and Mikko Rantanen. So he could definitely be a an upper echelon player in the league.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, this is it's a great deal for Dallas. Again, it's a lot to give up: 2 first, 2 third, and Stankoven, who's kind of your best prospect, who's kind of fully established himself in the NHL this year. It is a lot to give up, but you do have Mikko Rantanen for this year in your playoff run and the next 8 years. That's worth it. For Carolina, it hurts losing Rantanen and going out and getting him, not being able to convince him to sign. Definitely hurts. But if you look at it long term, big picture, you're giving up Martin Necas, a second, and Jack Drury, fourth line center. You get 2 firsts, Stankoven, and 2 thirds back. It looks better when you look at it from that way.
I was gonna say, like, I'm seeing some people down on the Hurricanes a little bit. Absolutely not. You got to look at it big picture. And
I am a bit down on the Hurricanes a tad though, and that is because, and this was already said by Jim Eric Tulsky after the deadline, that because it took so long because Rantanen and his camp were like firm on like 13.25 or 13 mil per year, and Dallas wasn't willing to do that till eventually Rantanen and his camp gave in and agreed to the 12. It took so long that Carolina was trying to flip those first round picks. They were trying to flip that to go and get a Brock Besser or Carter Keller, whatever, but they didn't have enough time because of how long this contract negotiation held up. So I mean, like when you look at a big picture again, it is a good return for Carolina. What you originally gave up in Necas, a second Drury to get this haul is good, but it drastically hurts your playoff chances this year.
Yeah.
Like if you could have ended up having Stankoven a first and you got a Brock Besser, you got a Rickard Rakell. I like the Hurricanes a bit more, but after this, it's just, I don't see them beating a Washington. I don't see them, and even if they power through the teams in the Metro, I don't see them beating a Tampa, a Florida, Toronto.
And there's a damn good chance they're going to be facing Rantanen in the finals, even if they find out a way to do that. So,
yeah. And if it's not Rantanen, very good chance it's Martin Necas. So,
yeah, actually, it's rough for them, but at the same time, if they weren't able to extend those rentals that they were going out to get, like, it's almost better that they don't make it, because this is a team that is very much strong and could win soon. But they are not a team, in my mind, that is in win now. Some of these teams that where it's like, here's our window, we got to win there, and they're win now teams. This team, Aho, 8 years, Jarvis, 8 years, Svechnikov, 5, Kotkaniemi at 6 isn't great. They got Carrier for 6 years, Slavin for 9 more years, Sean Walker for 5, and they've got Logan Stankoven coming up. They've got all kinds of incredible prospects coming up that I keep hearing about, and somehow they're all linked to Carolina. Like they look like they're going to be.
You got to trade these firsts though, and
Yes.
Again, it is a 2026 first, so next year, along with a 2028, that's a couple years down the road. You have to trade these. You have to trade them and go out and get established players. Whether it's goaltending, forwards, defensemen, you need to go out and you need to get pieces, because again, you are trying to win now. You don't need future assets trickling in multiple years down the road. Go out and get players now and try to win, which I expect them to do. So long term, overall, looking at everything, Dallas, I'm giving them an A+ because you get Mikko Rantanen, who in the last 5 years is top 5 in terms of points and goals.
Yeah.
So it doesn't even matter what you give up, because your time to win is now, and your core that you've already built up is great and young. So you don't really need much more young pieces or picks coming up. For Carolina,
and they got him for cheap as well. Like, kind of flying under the radar as well. Like, people were saying like Rantanen's probably coming up on 13.5 to 14 mil in free agency, maybe more if teams are insane enough. They got him at 12. They got him at a really reasonable number compared to the value he could have got.
So I do say good on Dallas for standing their ground. I mean, like, we're not doing 13. We're not doing 13.5.
They're a great squad. They didn't need to.
Yeah.
They were playing with house money and they ended up winning.
Carolina, I'm going to give him a B. Just because, yeah, you in terms of looking at like of what you originally gave up to get Rantanen, what you got back is a great haul. But at the end of the day, it hurts your chances this season, and you didn't improve your team for the playoffs this year. You actively got much worse for this year. So I really like the pieces they ended up with, but you needed to do more work to make your team better now, and they weren't able to do that, unfortunately. Not due to lack of trying, just with how long it took for the Rantanen deal to be
Rantanen and
finalized
his
and done.
agent are they're tough cookies to deal with. It sounds like
He's going to be public enemy number one whenever he comes back to Carolina.
Yeah.
No
I
doubt.
definitely agree. A plus easy for the Stars. I'm going to give an A to the Hurricanes. It hurts them this year, but I don't think this has to be their win now year. So I think this could help them massive going forward with just the 4 valuable picks and then Stankoven as well. Like I still really like it. I'm not as crazy about it as I am for the Stars getting Rantanen. So that's why it's an A minus ish, but I still think it's pretty good work
It's
for
still a
them.
great return, no doubt, 100% for Carolina. Moving on to the next one, we already talked about it. It was the Luke Shen to Pittsburgh for a second and a fourth. So we don't need to dive in much on that, as we already discussed it.
Yeah.
The Toronto Maple Leafs getting their hands in here on the deadline, receiving centerman Scott Lawton, along with a fourth in 2025 and a sixth in 2027, in exchange for prospect Nikita Grabankin, along with a conditional first round pick in 2027. And Philadelphia is retaining 50% of Lawton's contract for the remainder of this year and next year.
Oh, he
This is
signed
what
for
Toronto
2?
needed. Yeah, he's got next year as well. So
I like it.
Toronto is
Okay.
getting a really solid third line center brought in, um, who can play big minutes. He kind of can do well in all areas of the game. You're getting him at 1.5, so
That's
for a
really good.
mid-level prospect and a first, I mean, yeah, like with how much Tampa and Florida have been buying, you kind of had to. And
Yeah.
they were in on Braden Shen, which is one of the mock trades we talked about.
Yeah.
They were heavily after him. He wasn't willing to waive his no trade clause to go to Toronto, or was modified. And so they pivoted to Ryan O'Reilly, trying to bring him back. And that it kind of tells you a little bit something about how bad maybe the vibes are in Toronto, because that's why Ryan O'Reilly left. He wasn't willing to waive to leave Nashville to go back to Toronto. He was like,
I
I'd
mean,
rather just stay in Nashville and miss the playoffs than go back to Toronto.
we already knew that though, right? Like the media is just absolutely nuts over there that these
Well, it was
guys
more
just
than
get
just the
hammered
media,
with
though.
it.
It was locker room stuff for O'Reilly.
No, I haven't heard about any of that.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, that was the biggest thing of why he didn't resign. Was there was just lots of stuff in the locker room and personalities that he didn't want to be involved with all that.
Mm.
And now it's even more telling that he'd rather just be missing the playoffs with Nashville than try and chase a cup again with Toronto.
Yeah. But I love this for Toronto.
It's a great pick. It's great for both teams, honestly. Philly had their price for Lawton, which was a first. You got that. Toronto had a hole they needed that Scott Lawton fills, and they got it.
Yeah.
That's it's an A for both teams. Both teams had a need and a want, and they got that.
I agree. And I did also say a couple episodes ago, we were talking about the Leafs, who they might go for. And I was saying that they should go for a defenseman. But yeah, I had done a little bit more research recently, listened to a couple Leafs fans' takes on it, and everyone seems in agreement. They were looking for some depth forwards, a
Well,
centerman
they did
mostly.
add a
So
defenseman, so it's
they
you weren't
did.
entirely wrong.
They did.
We'll get to that. They did add to their defense, so
Yeah.
you were on the right track a little bit.
But we'll keep moving on and we'll get to that eventually. Next we have the Jets and the Kraken. This one's pretty easy to break down. Tanev going to the Jets, second rounder in 27 going to the Kraken. I like this for the Jets. Good pickup, Brandon Tanev. Good depth player. The Kraken, second rounder is good value. Probably prefer it a little bit sooner than 27, but
Yeah, it's a good deal for both teams. I think, is Tanev worth necessarily a second straight up? maybe not, but again, that's what the market was set at.
Yeah.
That's in terms of what players are going for. That's what he was worth. So Brandon Tanev goes back to Winnipeg. It helps beef up Winnipeg's bottom six, which they needed. Great. Sal gets a second back. Great. It's another A for both teams.
Yeah. Yeah, totally agree there.
Next trade on the board here. This was one of the bigger ones and kind of the proving point that the Boston Bruins were in fact going to be sellers. The Bruins trading away centerman Charlie Coyle along with a 5th-round pick in 2026 in exchange for Casey Middlestat, prospect Will Zellers, and a 2nd-round pick in 2025. I like this for both teams. I think Casey Middlestat didn't work out in Colorado. They tried the experiment. It didn't really work. Charlie Coyle is a proven player and is going to be one of the best third-line centers amongst playoff teams. And for Boston, you get a second back. You get Middlestat who can kind of fill that role. You maybe hope to flip him, but the biggest thing is you kind of move on from your older aging players as you're starting to try and get younger and what is looking like they're trying to do a retool. So this does exactly for what both teams need, I think.
Yeah, 100%.
Colorado, I'll give an A minus. Boston, I'll give a B because I don't love taking on Casey Middlestat's contract, but again, if you put him with Pasternak, that contract could look like a steal. Like, you never quite know.
Honestly, I'm a little bit higher on Boston's end than most people seem to be for this one. Middlestat, he's 26, still relatively young. He's making $5.75 million. Like, that's not a crazy amount for 3 years, and it doesn't look like they're going to be against the cap right away anymore. But with the cap going up, it's not a huge amount, and like people are saying he's struggling. He's got 34 points in 63 games for the Avs this year, so like you know, that you'd like it to be a little higher, you know. In Buffalo one year you put up 59 and 82, but you know, if you're still getting 45, 50 points out of a guy, if he's making just under 6 mil, it's not a boat anchor.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like it for both teams.
Moving on to the next one. This one's a quick one. We can just rattle through. Columbus Blue Jackets acquire forward Luke Cunnin from the San Jose Sharks in exchange for a 2025 4th-round pick. 2025 4th-round pick. Really nothing to give up. Columbus is getting a good bottom six player that trying to go on a playoff push. So
I love this for Columbus. If nothing else, this says we're buying. And they're giving up a 4th-rounder, like you said. That's whatever. But yeah, it sends a message of we're not shipping out our UFAs and we're not doing this and that. They're looking to win. And are they favorites? Absolutely not. But you know what? That's
if you make
the
playoffs
for the locker
that's
room.
Incredible. Exactly. Yeah. And the biggest thing with Columbus is noting that they didn't trade Ivan Provorov. Like they weren't selling out anyone, like you said. They re-signed Olivier and they went out and they acquired a bottom sixer. So they're committed to trying to make a run for the playoffs. So that's all you can ask for.
Oh, I'm just looking ahead at some of them because I had a right before we did this, I had a dentist appointment, so I actually missed some of the things happening right at the end of the deadline. So I'm still seeing some of these for the first time, and man, some of these fan bases are going to be losing their damn mind.
Yeah. The next two we can kind of just quickly rattle through here. The Chicago Blackhawks acquire centerman Joe Veleno from Detroit in exchange for Peter Mrazek and Craig Smith. In my opinion, it's a nothing deal. Like, I know you're on Peter Mrazek, but you've also been jerking off Cam Talbot all year on Detroit. Like, I don't know. It's not enough for Detroit when you're trying to make the playoffs this year. The window was open to make it, and this was your only move.
Yeah, I don't know.
I hope you missed the playoffs now, honestly. I really do. Ottawa was aggressive. They went out and they got players. Detroit said no. So,
yeah, I just don't.
Bigger buyers.
Yeah, they really need help on their forward core. They could use a little bit of depth. They could use some help on the blue line, and instead they went out and got a goalie that I really like. Mrazek. Is he much of an upgrade over Talbot or Lyon? Probably not.
Yeah, I don't think so.
They've also got Kosa down there. They've still got Jack Campbell. They've got like 7
You got Trey
goalies.
Augustine coming up. Like,
They've got 7 goalies signed to contracts, and that's without Trey Augustine having one yet. Like, I get some of them are expiring the next few years for sure, but I just don't know why. What?
It just doesn't make much sense to me, honestly.
Yeah, but sure.
Next on the board, next on the board here, the Pittsburgh Penguins acquire Chase Stillman and Max Graham, 2 prospects, along with a 3rd-round pick in 2027, in exchange for Cody Glass and Jonathan Gruden. Again, it's really just a depth trade, so I don't care.
Yeah, Cody Glass.
I just don't care.
Cody Glass could be something neat. So could the 3rd-rounder. Meh. We'll see. We'll see if something happens. I guess
and now we get into...
There's the Devils centerman depth we asked for, I guess.
Now we get into the deals as far as it looks as right now. I believe these are all the deals that we're going to see that have trickled in after the deadline. Before we get into, I believe, are the kind of 3 big ones that took place afterwards. I'm just going to quickly just list off the other kind of minor deals that happened. We don't even have to go in discussion, just to put them out there.
Go for it.
The Boston Bruins acquired defenseman Henry Jokiharju from the Buffalo Sabres for a 4th-rounder in 2026. The Chicago Blackhawks acquire Aku Ratti, not Atu Ratti, the rights to Victor Soderstrom, who is playing over in Sweden, I believe, along with Shea Weber's contract from Utah for a 5th-rounder in 2026. The Carolina Hurricanes get Mark Jankowski from Nashville for a 5th in 2026. New Jersey gets another defenseman in Dennis Cholowski from the Islanders for Adam Beckman. New Jersey acquires Daniel Sprong from Seattle, which is still to be determined. So I wonder if it's maybe just future considerations at this point. I haven't been able to find out what the details are on that one.
Probably a 4th, 5th, or 6th, like something like that.
I can't imagine much.
He's probably not free, but he's not getting. I don't even think he gets a 3rd.
The Buffalo Sabres acquired defenseman Eric Brandstrom from the New York Rangers in exchange for Stanley Cup champion Nicholas Aube-Kubel. The Colorado Avalanche are bringing back Eric Johnson from the Philadelphia Flyers in exchange for forward Giovanni Smith. And all that is left is the 3 big deals that trickled in after the deadline. These were trade calls that were pending at the time of the deadline. I guess we'll start at the smaller of the 3 and work our way up to the biggest one, the biggest shocker that came out of nowhere. The first one, the Ottawa Senators acquire forward Fabian Zetterlund along with prospect Tristan Robbins, along with a 4th-round pick in exchange for Noah Gregor, Zach Ostapchuk, and a 2nd-round pick in 2025, going back to San Jose.
Yeah, I don't know a ton of these names super intimately, so maybe you could give some more insight. But what are your thoughts on this? Like, I know you felt surprised when Zetterlund got traded, but I really don't know exactly what his value would be at, and I don't know a ton about these guys they got back either. So I'm really not too sure on the value they've gotten or what they've given up. But if you got some thoughts on it.
Yeah, so we are a bit crunched on time, so I'll try to keep this short and sweet. Basically, from what it sounds like, is Fabian Zetterlund, who is an RFA at the end of the year. His agent, his camp, wanted to wait until the end of the season to try and work out a deal, and that just didn't fit in with San Jose's timeline.
Generally, a lot of the time that does mean we're gonna quietly leave to free agency as well.
Well, he's an RFA, so it's like you can basically just hold out and try to get more money being an RFA. The biggest thing is like San Jose does hold his rights, but you can get put in potentially a situation if they're just asking for much more than you want. Fabian Zetterlund, who has been great during his time in San Jose, it is very unfortunate that they did move on from him, but again, I really do believe that the big picture is a contract just wasn't going to work out. Tristan Robbins, prospect, but I don't expect him to be much. 4th round pick, who cares with that? San Jose getting Noah Gregor back. He's just former Shark. He's just a roster player to ride it out in the season, so they actually have able bodies to play. 2nd round pick in 2025. I like that because I think it then gives San Jose more ammunition to potentially trade up either in this draft or you go out and you grab someone else at the draft. Who knows? But I believe the biggest piece is Zach Ostpachuk coming back. He is a young 21-year-old prospect. He is a bigger body.
6'4".
Has looked good in the AHL. Hasn't gotten many cracks in the NHL. When he has been injured. It is worth noting, recently in juniors, he did fight Matt Rempe and won that fight. So,
hey, we
San
love to
Jose is
hear it.
getting a big body that will probably be a bottom 6 centerman or winger. He can play both. He can chip in offensively. From what it sounds like, can play decent 2-way game and can play that physical, hard-nosed style that they need. So, Sharks fans are upset Zetterlund goes. I get it. He was a great fit. The vibes were great with him on the team, but you're a rebuilding team. And as someone whose favorite team is going through a rebuild, I always tell people when you're in a rebuild, unless you draft a player in like the top 10, do not get attached to anybody.
Yeah.
Like you just don't get attached to any player because anyone could go at any given moment. Everybody thought Fabian Zetterlund was safe. Well, clearly not. But San Jose's got a lot of good young up and coming prospects. They've already got a lot of good young up and coming pieces in place. So long term, Fabian Zetterlund is a 3rd liner. And what are you willing to pay him that? If his camp is asking for 5+ mil, which the way he's been playing, he could get about that. You don't want to be locking in long term paying a 3rd liner 5 mil when you have to pay all your other young guys. So could the return maybe have been a bit better? Maybe, yeah, given what Zetterlund's done. But you're getting a prospect that I think can be good. You're getting a second that you could potentially turn into more. And for Ottawa, I mean, you're continuing to go in on trying to make the playoffs. I think Zetterlund slots in great either on your 2nd line or your 3rd line. He can be a little bit more long term because he fits more on the timeline of your other players as you're coming out of a rebuild. So for Ottawa, like I'll give him a B+. And for San Jose, a B-. I think it just really remains to be seen on what does Ostpachuk turn into. He is a former 2nd round pick in 2021. And what does San Jose do with that second?
Yeah.
But I do like it more face value for Ottawa as they are getting the better player and they're
loading up for this year.
Yeah, they're trying to go to make the playoffs this year, and Zetterlund can be a little bit more of a long-term fit for them. So it hurts losing Zetterlund as a Sharks fan, but taking the fan, glasses off and just looking at it long-term and behind it makes sense. I can understand this deal.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll see. Ottawa is making an absolute push. We've talked about them quite a few times now today, and I'm really interested to see if they end up making the playoffs. They are currently 4th in the Atlantic. Does that have them? That has them. They are currently in the 2nd wildcard spot with a game in hand on every single team below them. So,
yeah,
they were already right in there. If they can improve with all these additions, they probably should end up being in the playoffs.
Yeah, you know what? They're definitely making a strong push. So,
but we have 2 left. I guess we'll go with the smaller of them. Save the big one for the end. I have done a little research. The website we're using, at least for me, it still shows TBD on one of the sides, but I have found a little bit through searching around. So I don't know if you have the full trade, but I have pieces. But the core of the deal is the Toronto Maple Leafs acquire Brandon Carlo from the Boston Bruins, and by the looks of it, they are getting a second-round pick back in Boston that could turn into a first-rounder. Oh, no, sorry, that's not it. No, for
I
this
believe
one,
it's a 2027 first.
a 2027 first and Leafs prospect Fraser Mitten.
I mean, yeah, I like this deal for both teams. I think, like you mentioned before, Toronto did need to add something to their defense, and their biggest thing is a defenseman. And Brandon Carlo is what, like he's a plus. What is he? I just had it. He's a plus 129 across his career with the Bruins. He's not going to wow you offensively or on the score sheet, but playing a solid stay-at-home defensive game, that's exactly what they needed. You give up a first, okay, whatever. Brandon Carlo's got term for like 3 more years on, again, what I think he brings to the table. Decent contract. And Fraser Minton, you know,
He's going to
if
be
you're
good,
if you're a Leafs prospect, your value is juiced up by fans in the media 100%. In my opinion, realistically, maybe gets to a second liner, but probably
yeah.
a third liner, a career third
middle
liner.
middle six guy. And I think that's what most people are expecting of him. And a first rounder and a middle six guy for a guy who all of a sudden doesn't fit your timeline, like, yeah, it's not bad.
I like it for both teams. Toronto gets exactly what they needed on the blue line, a guy with term and a guy that can play that game. And Boston, you continue to sell. You add you get a draft pick, which whatever you want to do with that, up to you. You get a forward prospect, so and it makes you worse for this season to try and get a better draft pick.
Yeah, this
like it's an A for both teams, really. If it's again, it's one of those ones where it's exactly what each team needed.
Yeah, completely agree. It's just crazy. I've never seen this since I started paying attention to hockey. I haven't seen the Bruins sell, and they're selling hard.
And it's not done.
No, it's not.
The biggest bomb dropped by Elliot Friedman, right after the trade deadline, as trades started to trickle through, is the Boston Bruins are trading their captain Brad Marchand to the Florida Panthers. The Florida Panthers acquiring Brad Marchand. It feels like an underwhelming return. It is a conditional second round pick that will turn to a first round pick in 2028 if Brad Marchand plays in over 25% of the Florida Panthers playoff games this year. In the first 2 rounds of the 2025 playoffs.
Yeah. Is that it?
So it's a conditional 2027 second that upgrades to a 2028 first round pick if Marchand plays in 25% or more of Florida's games in rounds 1 and 2.
A
little bit underwhelming for Boston, not gonna lie. A little bit underwhelming.
At literally everywhere I've looked, it just says TBD. I have not found anything.
I got it on Twitter here. That's what it's looking like.
Wow, I'm floored. That's all they got. This guy just won at the Four Nations and didn't look out of place. There was no talk of him getting pulled out of the lineup. Like, wow, that's
which makes you wonder because he is currently a he'll be a UFA at the end of the season. I doubt Florida can re-sign him, and I doubt they will, given that you'd much rather re-sign guys like Ekblad and Bennett. So there's a chance maybe Marchand goes back to Boston in the offseason.
I think he either does or he goes
Colorado.
He goes to either a top contender, but I could very easily see him going back to Boston after this.
Yeah, and I'm assuming that Boston will end up getting that first round pick in 2028 because I expect Marchand to be back healthy and and playing every game. If he's healthy, he's not a healthy scratch. But it would be a first in 2028. So 4 drafts from now. So
I just don't know how it's not a guaranteed first. How they couldn't get that for Brad Marchand? Look at some of the other names that have been going for first rounders. Like Marchand's better than most of them. I think a big part of it
is because he is injured, so Florida's kind of hedging their bets of like on the off chance if he comes back and gets hurt. Like I definitely think if he was healthy, they get a guaranteed first or a first and more.
Yeah.
But so, I mean, for Boston, you're trading Marchand, you get that back. If it was sooner, I'd like it more. But for Boston, like you get a C. For Florida, you get an A because it's a pick way down the road. Your goal is to win a cup right now, and the fact that you can roll into the playoffs and have in your top 9 forwards, you have Sam Bennett, Matthew Tkachuk, Brad Marchand. You could have them all in the same line together and just create chaos. You could have each of them on a separate line.
Their penalty kill is insane now. Like
yeah.
what's their first penalty kill? Probably Barkov Reinhart, and then
Barkov Reinhart, and then
who's on the second? Freaking Brad Marchand and
Nico Sturm, maybe
Nico
Sam
Sturm
Bennett,
and
like
Lundell, like
Lundell in the mix.
Luosterainen. They've got so many options. It's disgusting.
It's so insane that the fact that like he might get traded, might not. There's a lot of talks of Vegas, him going to Vegas, LA, and then just out of nowhere, boom, he's going in the division to Florida, the team that kind of dismantled the Bruins' entire trajectory after upsetting them in the playoffs a couple years ago.
They retired Bergeron, man.
Yeah, yeah, they really did.
That this trade was crazy to me, and it's too bad because, and I think I've mentioned it before, but as a Lightning fan, I've been waiting for the downfall of the Bruins for so damn long, and now they are selling off all these guys, and it's hard to even be happy about it because they're selling to the Leafs, they're selling Brad Marchand to the Panthers, like the annoying pieces of shit that we got to deal with, they're not going anywhere. They're just wearing a different jersey.
They're just, exactly.
So
yeah, man, it's weird. And
the Bruins get one last FU over on us, which if they're known for anything, it's getting one over on everybody saying fuck you while they do it.
Yeah. Like it's weird for Boston. I get it. Like at least you get something back, but I don't love the return. The biggest thing around the deadline is you look at the divisions, right? And you look at Florida in the Atlantic at the top. They bought big. You bring in Seth Jones. You go and you get Brad Marchand. You get Nico Sturm. Like you get good ads. Toronto. You get Scott Laughton. You get Brandon Carlo. Tampa Bay. You get Gordon Bjorkstrand. Ottawa. You swap Norris for Cousins. You bring in Fabian Zetterlund. But then in the Metro, Washington didn't make many moves. But again, if things are rolling well, don't mess with it. You also know Ryan Leonard's coming. Carolina, you got pieces long term, but you actively got worse at the deadline here. New Jersey, with Jack Hughes going down, you couldn't really be buyers, and the guys you did go and buy didn't make sense. So in my opinion, you got worse. So it's the Atlantic teams were beefing up. Metro teams didn't. Look at the Central. Dallas went crazy getting not at the deadline, but they did bring in Mikael Granlund and now Mikko Rantanen. Winnipeg, I think you really lost out on a lot of the sweepstakes, and unfortunately couldn't fill that second line center. But in a normal trade deadline, you did all right bringing in Brandon Tanev and Luke Shen, but you already have good pieces in place, so maybe you can make it work. But Colorado went crazy and big. And then Pacific, Vegas, you bring in Riley Smith, you didn't do much. LA, you brought in Kuzmenko, you really didn't do much. Calgary in the mix, you didn't do anything at all. You didn't buy, you didn't sell, you just stayed. And Edmonton,
to be fair, I will say the Flames did buy earlier. They made their trade before.
Well, actually, that is true. That is true. They
did.
That is very true. And then Edmonton, you did buy because you went out and you got Trent Frederick, you got Max Jones, and you got Jake Wallman, and you didn't trade Evander Kane, but he's out the rest of the regular season, so you can bring him back in the playoffs, and that's fine. So I really think we're going to see some clash of the Titans between Central and Atlantic teams, and I ultimately think we're going to get a Central and Atlantic matchup in the Stanley Cup final. I really, really do.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to count out. I'm not even going to pretend like I think the Kings can go in the playoffs. The Oilers or the Knights, I could see them getting up there. I'm just straight up, I've said it for a while. I'm never going to count out the Oilers until they're out because they have Connor McDavid. But Yeah, I don't feel as confident about them. I think I picked them to win the cup this year just because at some point McDavid has to win one, probably in Edmonton. But
Yeah.
looking at their team, it's good. It's not Dallas Stars good. It's probably not Winnipeg
Yeah.
Jets good. It's not
Even
Vegas
even
good.
Colorado, when you take a look at Colorado's lines and depth chart, like they are looking very good now as well.
Yeah, so the top guys in Edmonton are gonna have to carry him there. But man, this is oh man, so many team spots, so big. Like maybe it's just I didn't pay attention multiple years ago, but it really felt like we didn't see as many teams buy as hard as we're seeing them in the last few years.
It's because the league is wide open this year, though. Is a big part of it.
But even then, like the last like 2 or 3 years, we've seen teams go in heavy on some of these guys and multiple guys to really build up their squads. I feel like 5+ years ago, we saw guys would go out and they get their one guy or they'd bring in a few pieces, but I don't know. Since around 2020, it feels like teams have changed on how incredibly hard they're willing to go in to win. And
Yeah, yeah.
it's just phenomenal for the sport, man. Like it's so much more entertaining than going into the playoffs. Like, ah, this team's probably gonna win it, but who knows? Now it's like fuck, like Tampa and Florida just both bought massive. Are they both even in the top 5 for contenders? Because there's so many teams that are that upper
Are looking
echelon.
really good.
Like
Yeah.
there's the elite teams, and then there's like the freaking like there's several teams that like if you told me in 5 years they'd be a dynasty, I wouldn't be shocked.
Hmm. Yeah. No,
Like,
I hear
and
you.
that's insane.
Before I hit you with our final question, we wrap this one up as we are going pretty long on time here. Make sure to tune in next week on Tuesday, where we will have more fallout from the trade deadline, and we will have a little bit more to discuss with all this, and a little bit more on the outlook of the upcoming playoffs. Just run through our official trade board, and we can see who got traded, who didn't. On our top 10 trade board, we had Brock Nelson at 1. We did know he got traded to Colorado. Rickard Rakell at number 2. He did not get traded by the Pittsburgh Penguins. Ryan Donato at number 3, who we will talk about next week. So there's lots to talk about there. On Chicago, did not get traded. Number 4, Braden Shen, St. Louis, did not get traded. Number 5, Brandon Tanev did get traded, going off to Winnipeg. Number 6, Kyle Palmieri, New York Islanders, did not get traded. I believe he's got a contract extension coming in pretty soon here. Number 7, Yanni Gourde, Seattle Kraken, going to the Tampa Bay Lightning. Number 8, Scott Lawton of the Philadelphia Flyers on his way to Toronto. Number 9, Gustav Nyquist of the Nashville Predators going to Minnesota. And number 10, Casey Middlestat of the Colorado Avalanche going to the Boston Bruins. On the 50-50 trade list, Dylan Cousins, he's off to Ottawa. Bowen Byram, not traded. Rasmus Ristolainen, not traded. JJ Peterka, not traded. Ivan Provorov, not traded. Ryan O'Reilly, not traded. John Gibson, surprisingly, not traded. Trevor Zegras, not traded. And Trent Frederick did go to Edmonton. And our big one, the long shots, Erik Karlsson didn't move. Seth Jones, we know, went to Florida. Mikko Rantanen did go to Dallas. Brad Marchand, surprising us all, off to Florida. And then Brock Besser, Thatcher Demko, and Noah Dobson all not moved. Braden, before we wrap this up, who is your biggest winner and your biggest loser of the trade deadline this year?
For biggest winner, it's got to be Dallas. They are set for the future. They're incredibly set now. They just look like they're ready to kill it and everything in their path. Loser, I don't know if there were any big losers. Pittsburgh could have. It's a lot of teams that were kind of inactive. Pittsburgh needed to do more. I'm not going to say Edmonton because I like some of the moves they did make, but they needed to get a goalie and they didn't. So
I'm with you on
maybe
Dallas.
Pittsburgh or the Devils as losers just because they didn't do what they needed to.
So I'm with you. I think Dallas is the biggest winner. For me, the biggest loser is Detroit. Your goal is to make the playoffs this year. You're right in the hunt. You see all of these other Atlantic teams beefing up. You see the team you're competing with, the Ottawa Senators, beefing up, and you really don't do anything. You got Peter Mrazek, sure, but you already had Cam Talbot, so how much does that even really help you? It's not that Detroit necessarily made bad moves. It's just they really didn't do anything to help themselves out in a year where the door is open to get back in the playoffs. So
I'm wondering if Yzerman was just kind of, we're not going to win if we get in, so you know what? Maybe focus on next year. But how many years?
Keep doing that?
How many years can you do it, man? They've been a couple points out of the playoffs for a while now. Like at some point,
eventually got to pull the trigger and get something done. But that will wrap up everything we have for this episode, recapping the trade deadline. Remember, make sure to tune in next week on Tuesday, where we will have more coverage on more of the fallout from the trade deadline and a little bit more of a outlook on these teams as they gear up to make their push towards the playoffs. But Braden, as always, it is that time. Give us your final thoughts.
The Dallas Stars. Watch out for this team in particular, because wagon,
the Dallas Stars. Couldn't agree with you more on that. Once again, we do want to thank all of you for tuning in. Hope you guys enjoyed the trade deadline as much as we did. If you want to let us know your thoughts on any of the trades, any of the moves that did happen, maybe didn't happen, or rumored stuff, or what you would have liked to see, make sure to let us know. You can do so by reaching out to us on any of our socials. They are down in the links across all episodes, all platforms. Make sure to click those, come over and let us know your thoughts. But that will do it for this episode, recapping the trade deadline. Once again, hope you all enjoyed the craziness that we are seeing around the NHL. And as always, we will see you guys out on the ice on Tuesday next week.